Imagine being the favorite, stepping onto the court for millions of viewers, only to end up owning a record that every opponent remembers. The ATP Tour may broadcast triumphs and glory, but it also hides dark and embarrassing milestones and record-making mistakes. In this video, we'll explore every jaw-dropping ATP Tour record and explain how they happened, who holds them, and what they tell us about the human side of professional tennis. Most double faults in a single match. Let's begin with one of the most infamous records in professional tennis history, the most double faults in a single match. If there's one stat that screams nightmare performance, it's this. The unwanted record belongs to Swiss player Marc Rosset, who committed a jaw-dropping 30 double faults during a Davis Cup quarterfinal against France's Arnaud Clément in 2001. Imagine that, 30 times, handing your opponent free points at the highest level of international competition. Each double fault isn't just a point lost. It's a dagger to confidence, rhythm, and momentum. Rosset, once an Olympic gold medalist from Barcelona 1992 and one of Switzerland's biggest pre-Federer tennis stars, wasn't an average player. He had a booming serve, a classic attacking game, and an emotional on-court personality. Yet on that day in 2001, nothing worked. His first serves missed by inches, and his second serves were jittery, sometimes sailing long, other times bouncing into the net. 30 double faults later, Rosset's name became cemented in history, not for victory, but for one of the most excruciating performances ever recorded. What's more painful, this wasn't an isolated incident. Back in 1995 at Wimbledon, Rosset also hit 26 double faults against Michael Joyce in a first-round loss. That's two major matches defined by the same recurring flaw. While fans might laugh, it underscores the brutal psychological pressure of serving under bright lights. Was it poor technique, stage nerves, or just an off day magnified into eternity by statistics? Whatever the case, Rosset's record stands as a permanent reminder that even Olympic champions can collapse in the cruelest way possible. Well, that sounds interesting, but that's just the start. Stick around with us to know about more embarrassing ATP Tour records that will blow your mind. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe our channel for amazing content. Transitioning from one player's serving disaster to another form of sustained embarrassment, let's move from a single match failure to career-long futility. Most ATP Tour match losses in a career. Longevity is usually celebrated in tennis, unless it comes with too many losses. The record for most match losses in ATP history goes to Spanish veteran Feliciano Lopez, who racked up nearly 490 career losses before retiring. That's almost 500 times walking off the court as the loser. While Lopez was admired for his consistency and style, this particular record flips that narrative. It tells the story of a player who lasted long enough to keep getting beaten again and again by generations of new stars. To be fair, Lopez wasn't a failure by any means. He won 7 ATP titles, made deep slam runs, and was one of the sport's most respected serve and volleyers. But when the stats are tallied, the sheer number of defeats dwarfs the wins. Why? Because the longer you play, the more you inevitably lose. Staying on tour into your late 30s, facing players half your age with nothing to lose, takes guts, but also means taking more losses than anyone else. The embarrassment here lies in the paradox. He was too good to quit, but not good enough to dominate. Lopez's record reminds fans that tennis isn't only about titles, it's about survival. To lose 490 times means you were still relevant for over 2 decades, still fighting, still getting into tournaments. Yet, at the end of it all, you hold the record no player wants. From a single day's collapse to a lifetime's accumulation of defeats, we now move to a heartbreak of another kind, the finals that were never won. Most ATP singles finals reached without ever winning a title. Few records sting like this one, reaching 10 ATP singles finals and losing every single one. That's the painful story of Julien Benneteau, the talented Frenchman known for his beautiful one-handed backhand and graceful style, but also his brutal 0-10 record in ATP Tour finals. Benneteau wasn't a journeyman, he was consistently among the top 30, even defeating legends like Roger Federer in big matches. But when it came to converting finals into titles, something always went wrong. Sometimes it was nerves, sometimes an inspired opponent, and sheer bad luck. Whatever the reason, the pattern repeated over and over. A good week, strong wins, an electric run, and then heartbreak on Sunday. To reach 10 finals means you belong among the elite. To lose all 10 means the sport has a cruel sense of humor. Fans started watching his finals almost superstitiously, wondering if this would be the one he'd finally win. It never happened. His story is a portrait of almost. A man good enough to reach the brink of glory, but cursed to fall just short. Beneto's record highlights how fine the margins are at the top level. The difference between champion and runner-up is often just a handful of points. From finals heartbreak to statistical humiliation, let's move from the emotional pain of losses to the technical consistency of failure. Worst average of double faults per match, career basis. If one match can be a disaster, imagine a career defined by disaster. The players with the worst average of double faults per match in the Open era are Henrik Holm and Radomir Vasek, both averaging 7.2 double faults per match across their careers. That means, in every single match they played, they started by effectively gifting their opponents 7 free points. In professional tennis, where margins are razor thin, that's catastrophic. A double fault is a psychological wound. It signals hesitation, fear, and technical flaws. When it becomes a pattern, it defines you. For Holm and Vasek, it wasn't about one bad day, it was every day. That number reflects chronic inconsistency, a service technique that never truly clicked, or nerves that could never be tamed. The embarrassment here isn't in one failure, it's in predictability. Opponents entered matches knowing they'd receive several free points per set. In a sport where service reliability is everything, these men carried an unshakable stigma. Even casual fans might not recall their names, but statisticians remember the men who averaged 7 double faults per outing. And if double faults were bad, imagine failing not just in one element, but failing early and often. That takes us to one of the most demoralizing patterns in Grand Slam history. Most first-round exits at Grand Slams. Every tennis player dreams of a Grand Slam breakthrough, the roar of the crowd, the TV cameras, the glory. But for some, the Grand Slam stage is where dreams repeatedly die in round 1. The record for most first-round exits may not always be officially published, but several players have become symbols of this dreaded stat. Take Feliciano Lopez again, Viktor Troicki, or Ivo Karlovic, veterans who've seen first rounds more than any other stage. In one notable example, Ivo Karlovic suffered 30-plus first-round losses across his career. That's a painful consistency. You travel across continents, prepare for weeks, and lose in your opening match over and over again. The embarrassment lies in the spotlight. Grand Slams aren't ATP 200s and 50s, they're the biggest tournaments on Earth, watched by millions. Constantly losing in round 1 creates a legacy of unfulfilled potential. Every first-round loss chips away at confidence and credibility. Fans start to view such players as always early exits, while media coverage fades after day 1. For the player, it becomes psychological torture knowing that the stage that could define your career instead defines your failure. But if constant losing feels bad, imagine a match so fast that it ends before you even get a chance to fight. That brings us to the shortest match in ATP Tour history. Shortest match in ATP Tour history. Embarrassment can sometimes be measured in minutes. One of the shortest recorded matches on the ATP Tour came when Bernard Tomic lost 6-love in just 39 minutes at the Fairfield Challenger Final in 2018. That's less than the average time it takes for a set in most matches. For Tomic, once a Wimbledon quarterfinalist and a bright young star, this was a humiliation. The match barely had rallies. It was a meltdown disguised as a tennis contest. Viewers were left shocked at how little fight he showed, prompting critics to question his motivation and professionalism. Short matches like these are symbolic. They show not just defeat, but surrender. Every sport has bad days, but losing so quickly on such a stage makes it look like you didn't even try. For Tomic, already battling controversy and reputation issues, this performance was another nail in the coffin of public respect. And from losing too fast, we move to losing too often, to the same opponent. Most consecutive losses to one opponent. Few things crush an athlete's pride more than repeatedly losing to the same rival. Several ATP pros, including Taylor Fritz, Gail Monfils, and Richard Gasquet, share the embarrassing distinction of losing 10 straight matches to Novak Djokovic. Of course, losing to Djokovic isn't shameful in itself. He's one of the greatest ever, but the consistency of defeat stings. Each new match becomes a psychological burden. You remember every prior loss. Every statistic reminds you that you've never beaten this man. By the 10th meeting, the match isn't just physical, it's emotional warfare. For someone like Fritz, it represents a mountain he can't climb. Every new opportunity becomes a test not of talent, but of belief. Fans and commentators start bringing up the record, turning the matchup into a running joke. When you become the guy who never beats Djokovic, your career gets defined by someone else's dominance. From losing to the same opponent again and again, let's turn to those who reached finals often but rarely won them. Stick around with us to know about more embarrassing ATP Tour records that will blow your mind. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe our channel for amazing content. The longest losing streak ever, Vince Spada's 21-match nightmare. In the world of professional tennis, losing a few matches can hurt. Losing 10 in a row? That can destroy confidence. But losing 21 consecutive matches? That's exactly what Vince Spada endured between October 1999 and June 2000, the longest losing streak in ATP history. Spada was once a promising American player, known for his gritty baseline game and strong work ethic. But during that stretch, he simply couldn't catch a break. Every opponent, from top seeds to qualifiers, managed to get past him. The media dubbed him Vince Spada Ain't Afraida, a phrase that later became the ironic title of his autobiography. What makes this record even more embarrassing is that Spada wasn't a bad player at all. He'd reached the quarterfinals of the Australian Open just a year earlier and was ranked inside the top 20. But once the slump began, it became a mental battle he couldn't win. Still, Spada's story is oddly inspiring. After 21 straight losses, he came back, rebuilt his ranking, and even won an ATP title later in his career. But that losing streak remains immortalized as the darkest run ever recorded on the ATP Tour. And speaking of runs, not all streaks are about losing. Some are about longevity, and one player took that to an absurd, slightly embarrassing extreme. The most consecutive Grand Slam appearances. Feliciano Lopez's 79 Slam Marathon. Feliciano Lopez holds a record that's both admirable and, in a way, embarrassing. 79 consecutive Grand Slam appearances, from the 2002 French Open to the 2022 Australian Open. Why embarrassing? Despite 2 decades of showing up without missing a single slam, Lopez never made it past the quarterfinal stage. In a sport where attendance doesn't equal achievement, this record became a symbol of endurance without ultimate success. Known for his slick one-handed backhand and sharp net play, Lopez was a fan favorite, especially on grass. But his consistency at simply being there often overshadowed the fact that he never truly broke through the elite tier. It's the tennis equivalent of showing up to every single exam for 20 years, but never scoring an A. Admirable commitment, yes, but also a painful reminder that persistence doesn't always translate to victory. Still, while Lopez showed up again and again, others were remembered for completely losing control, especially when temper and pressure collided. Most code violations in a career, John McEnroe's explosive legacy. Few names in the history of tennis are as inseparably linked with rage, rebellion, and raw brilliance as John McEnroe. A tennis genius by all standards, McEnroe's talent with a racket was matched only by his volcanic temper. On one hand, he was an artist, painting shots across the court with surgical precision and unmatched touch. On the other hand, he was a walking storm of profanity, broken rackets, and verbal outbursts that shook the genteel image of the sport. Over the course of his illustrious yet chaotic career, McEnroe accumulated more than 125 code violations, making him the most penalized player in ATP history, a record that remains both legendary and embarrassing. Yet behind the chaos was a player of staggering ability. His soft hands at the net, his serve and volley precision, and his ability to dismantle even the toughest baseliners made him one of the greatest to ever step onto a court. Still, that genius often collided head-on with his emotions. He was fined thousands of dollars over the years, defaulted from matches, and even temporarily suspended from the ATP Tour in 1987 after repeated behavioral violations. Every time he erupted, it made headlines. The tennis establishment criticized him, yet networks knew his presence guaranteed higher viewership. McEnroe's record for the most code violations is, in many ways, a dual legacy, one of brilliance and breakdown. It reflects how tennis, despite being a sport of control and precision, can expose raw emotion like few others. His story reminds us that greatness often walks hand in hand with chaos. That passion, when unchecked, can blur the line between heroism and humiliation. And while McEnroe's temper eventually became a part of tennis folklore, inspiring everything from documentaries to pop culture references, it also stands as a permanent reminder that even the most gifted athletes can be consumed by their own fire. But as McEnroe's fury slowly faded into legend and nostalgia, another player in a different era was setting a completely different kind of embarrassing record. One not about temper or defiance, but about speed. The fastest loss in ATP history. Jarkko Nieminen's 28-minute disaster. In 2014, Finland's Jarkko Nieminen entered the Miami Open confident and ready, only to walk off the court 28 minutes later, defeated by Bernard Tomic with a scoreline of 6-0, 6-1. That match became the shortest ATP-level match ever recorded, lasting just 28 minutes and 20 seconds. To put that in perspective, some warm-up routines take longer than the entire match. What made it even more shocking was that Nieminen wasn't a weak player. He'd been ranked inside the top 20 at one point and was known for his consistency. But on that humid Miami day, everything went wrong. Serves missed, returns misfired, and Tomic toyed with him like a wall ball session. The loss went viral instantly, cementing Nieminen's name in the ATP archives for all the wrong reasons. But if losing fast is one kind of humiliation, then losing repeatedly to the same person might be even worse, which brings us to the next record. Stick around with us to know about more embarrassing ATP Tour records that will blow your mind. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe our channel for amazing content. Most consecutive losses to a single player. David Ferrer versus Roger Federer, 17 times. David Ferrer was the ultimate fighter, fast, consistent, and relentless. Yet, against Roger Federer, he was completely powerless. Over the course of their careers, Ferrer played Federer 17 times and lost every single one. 17 meetings, 17 defeats, not even a single lucky break. While Ferrer was known for grinding down opponents, Federer's elegant shot-making and effortless aggression neutralized him every time. The Spanish warrior tried different tactics, more topspin, flatter shots, faster approaches, but nothing worked. The record highlights one of the cruel truths of tennis. Some matchups are just impossible to win, no matter how hard you fight. And Ferrer isn't alone. Other players, like Richard Gasquet, 0-20 versus Nadal, and Thomas Berdych, 7-20 versus Djokovic, have similar nightmares. But Ferrer's 0-17 streak remains a standout example of helpless consistency. And while some players can't win against certain opponents, others can't win anywhere at all, no matter how many tries they get. Most ATP finals lost without ever winning one. Julien Benneteau's 10-0 record. France's Julien Benneteau is a name every tennis purist respects. A stylish all-court player, a doubles expert, and one of the nicest guys on tour. But in singles finals, he's the definition of heartbreak. Benneteau reached 10 ATP singles finals in his career and lost every single one. He came close so many times against Federer, Tsonga, Gasquet, and others, but always fell short at the last step. The crowd often rooted for him, hoping that this time he'd finally lift that elusive trophy. But fate had other plans. To his credit, Benneteau never let the record define him. He later won an Olympic doubles gold medal, proving his talent was real, but his 0-10 record in ATP singles finals remains one of the most frustratingly unlucky streaks in tennis history. From unlucky runners-up to unlucky servers, the next record takes embarrassment to a measurable extreme. Most double faults in a single match, Andrei Pavel's 31 misfires. Serving is supposed to be the one shot in tennis that a player can truly control. No rallies, no reactions, no surprises. It's just you, the ball, and the net. Yet, on one unforgettable day in 1999, Romania's Andrei Pavel experienced what every professional dreads: the total collapse of that control. In a Davis Cup match against Italy, Pavel committed 31 double faults, setting the record for the most double faults ever recorded in a single ATP-level match, a record that has stood for decades, both shocking and humiliating in equal measure. By the middle of the match, the crowd, both sympathetic and stunned, began counting his double faults aloud, adding to the tension. Every misfire drew a groan, a chuckle, or applause out of pity. Even Pavel himself couldn't help but smile awkwardly as the number climbed higher. For a player who had already proven himself capable on the ATP Tour, this wasn't a rookie's meltdown. It was a mental landslide witnessed in real time. The longest match losing streak by a world number one, Lleyton Hewitt's 7 in 2003. Finally, we arrive at a record that perfectly captures how fragile dominance can be in professional tennis, how quickly the mighty can fall from grace. In 2003, Lleyton Hewitt, then the reigning world number one, suffered a shocking collapse that stunned fans and experts alike. He lost 7 consecutive matches, the longest losing streak ever recorded by a player sitting at the top of the ATP rankings. For someone known for his relentless energy and fighting spirit, it was a spectacular and unexpected fall. At just 22 years old, Hewitt had already achieved what most players could only dream of. He became the youngest world number one in history at 20, had 2 Grand Slam titles to his name, and was widely praised for his intensity, speed, and unbreakable determination. But the same fiery counterpunching style that had brought him glory began to betray him. Opponents meticulously analyzed his patterns, his flat returns, his deep court positioning, his heavy reliance on retrieving, and slowly dismantled his rhythm. From double faults and tantrums to never-ending losing streaks, the ATP Tour's history is filled with records no player wants to hold, yet they're what make the sport human. Every embarrassing number tells a deeper story of mental battles, pressure, and persistence. Because in tennis, as in life, it's not just about perfection. It's about who keeps showing up even after hitting rock bottom. Thanks for watching this video. Stay tuned with our channel to know more interesting facts about tennis. Stick around with us to know about more embarrassing ATP Tour records that will blow your mind. In the meantime, don't forget to subscribe our channel for amazing content.